All right, can we have all the panelists introduce themselves?
My name is Joel Braithwaite. I'm with Braithwaite Eagle. I'm a former prosecutor.
Into the mic.
I'm a former prosecutor. I've also been in juvenile justice in Washington, D.C. as D.C.'s juvenile justice compliance monitor, and now I'm into crypto.
Hi, I'm Lana Newman. I am a full-stack developer at Consensus DC. This branch of Consensus works primarily with governments, so we're working towards creating blockchain solutions for different government organizations.
My name is Ronald Moulton. I'm an entrepreneur, a community activist. I work with the police, against the police, work with the government, against the government, and I'm fighting for my people 24/7 creatively.
I'm Ariana Fowler. I'm also with Consensus with Liana, but I work on our social impact team. So we work with nonprofits, humanitarian organizations, the foreign parts of the government, such as State Department, USAID, et cetera.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daisy. I'm the director for Blockchain for Social Justice. So we train our young Black and brown folks to be developers. We host trainings in the community, how to invest in crypto, read white papers, all of that. And then we also teach people actually how to start their own blockchain. I'm a teacher at UC Berkeley with the subject, and also doing some work with California State right now for a blockchain commission. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so our first question is, how can blockchain be used against vulnerable communities?
I'll start. So something that we've seen with some blockchain projects and what we like to say, so I'm not a developer, I'm a consultant designing the projects, but what we say is trash in, trash out. Just because a government says that they're using a blockchain doesn't mean that it's accountable, that it's transparent. If they're using a private blockchain and they give no one access to the information that's being put onto the blockchain, then it's probably still corrupt. And so one of the things that we see when governments start trying to put their citizen identities onto the blockchain, it can oftentimes become a registry. We know that registries in history are not good, especially if they are not transparent. So be cautious when you hear that governments are putting identities onto blockchains is something I would say.
Thank you. I would like to add to that. I think looking at the intersection of blockchain with other technologies such as AI and VR, and how they can be used to make different type of predictions that are stored on the blockchain that are going to harm our community. Just for instance, I was at the BoxWorks conference the other day, and they had a panel, and one of the people on the panel, he was the head of the CTO for the Attorney General's office here in DC, and they're talking about how they're going to be using blockchain and AI to actually predict welfare fraud, to predict child support evading, and also to predict crime. Now, just think about that, and in terms of what that's going to do to our community. And then also just accelerating fascism, right? How Ariana just said, we have these different registries, you have everyone's data all in one place, stored on chain. What can they do with that? They can start making different type of inferences and predictions based on that data.
I think one of the biggest things we can do is educate, especially with our young people. I'm going to just give a brief story on what happened with black entertainment, right? So a lawyer of mine by the name of Johnny Bonds, he was supposed to be with Bob Johnson with BET when it first started. But when they changed the name from Black Education TV to Black Entertainment TV, he backed out. He said, it's not about my money, it's about educating my people. And I think the most important thing that's happening today with Sinclair and all the partners are doing is educating people on this, right? The reason why we get tricked and bamboozled and people are able to do what they do to us is because of lack of education. And the most important thing that we can do is to educate the people on this and not let people over-regulate what we do. Because once they start regulating this, then they control this. And one of the things that has driven black people out of this city and out of all of urban America is the regulations that the government put on us. Right? And we got to control this and control this vehicle and not let them take it over. Because when they take it over, that's when all the corruption starts. That's when all the manipulation starts. Right now, the people are controlling this. And as long as the people control this, then we have a vehicle to get us past all this corruption that we see in the government, the police department, the U.S. Attorney's Office, everywhere. So that's key. That's what I see.
Right.
I'm not going to try and follow that. I feel like the three of them covered it.
That was really strong. So what are your top fears and hopes of blockchain in the Black community?
I'll take a stab. I think my biggest fear is that Black people use crypto to buy coffee at Starbucks. And that's when everyone's like, yeah, I got Bitcoin. I'm buying coffee at Starbucks. That's my biggest fear.
Right.
My biggest fear is like everything else. They always give Blacks the bootleg stuff, right? And our services, look at Prince George's County, Maryland. Richest Black county in America. Schools on par with Baltimore City. Schools on par with Washington, D.C. public schools. And you ask yourself, well, I thought money equaled better education for our kids. How are we getting the same outcomes?
Yes, I am. Yeah, so one of my biggest fears, and I'm going to kind of steal your thing and do a little quick story. So I didn't become a developer until 2016, despite the fact that I went to college and was literally surrounded by engineers. All my friends were engineers, software engineers. Because I didn't have any information about it, I went in not really knowing that this was going to be a big thing. And I believe that blockchain is going to be the next big thing in technology, and so my fear is that the Black community is going to get left behind once again. Right now, Ariana and I are working in a tech company, and we both are working towards diversifying that company so that it's not another, well, us and a bunch of other people, I know. But we're working towards making sure that like we don't have another Google, another Facebook, thing like that, because it's a startup. And so if you understand these things from the get-go, how do we bring basically our people into the space? And the problem is we're once again sort of facing that, the backlash of bringing more diverse folks means that we're like compromising on quality, which is something that we both have had to basically say that's not what we're trying to do. So my fear is that as this technology grows and becomes bigger, that we are going to have issues getting those who are even interested in being in the space, just getting them in the room.
I have one more fear. I have one more fear to share, I'm sorry. One of my fears is that there are a lot of people in this blockchain space that thinks that blockchain is going to eradicate racism, much in the same way that when Barack Obama was elected, well, we're now post-cultural. These people may not be in this room today, but I'm definitely speaking to them because they're disguised as libertarians. They always say, well, you know, this is the one place you could come and you could make your claim, and it's race irrelevant, it's race neutral. And that's kind of one of the big lies that's being pushed upon Black people in this blockchain space, that, oh, in blockchain, just the true meritocracy is here.
Right.
Once we don't buy that, I think we'll be okay.
Right. I would like to add to that. Like, I think my number one fear is that we get left behind due to lack of interest, because I think something that we're also forgetting is that we have so much economic trauma that when we start talking about, hey, there's a new outlet for you to make money, there's a new way for you to build generational wealth, we're so skeptical and in fear because it's like, I already don't have nothing. I don't want to lose the little that I do have playing in a market that's a little bit like volatile. So we need to address that. And when we do our trainings, we do address that economic trauma in this space as well. And another fear that I have too is because blockchain, with the master nodes, which I guess basically a master node, it eliminates the need for having like a human being like there at the table doing validation and authenticating. And my fear with the different master nodes is that it's going to accelerate automation of jobs that are predominantly held by, lower income folks, predominantly Black and brown people, right? So then what's going to happen when we start automating all these different jobs because of blockchain and AI, and our folks are left with nothing? And then another fear is that we really just get caught up in the riffraff of these different platforms being built that are not really thinking about how different businesses and governments have designed infrastructure and platforms to continue to oppress us, right? So those are my main fears. And right now, I think there's some folks trying to develop a blockchain code of ethics, and I think that's great. However, where are your people of color who are informing that process, right? And then, for instance, like World Economic Forum, I'm gonna just tell a little story here, and this is on Facebook Live, and I really don't care, but there's a woman who I was trying to connect with because they have a fourth industrial revolution, basically blockchain department. And they're talking about, hey, we're actually promoting policies, practices, and programming for the blockchain space for underserved communities. And I'm like, okay, so what community organizations, where are the people of color, the activists, the organizers, all of that are helping you inform this process? I got nothing, like just really condescending, right? So these are the type of people that we're dealing with in these different positions of power in these major institutions. If you don't know World Economic Forum, they put on Davos every single year, right? So just to show how much of a reach and impact that they have. And these are the people that are tasked with creating code of ethics for our communities. And just look at the interactions. So my fears.
And I want to say something too. So I'm not a genius in this arena here, but I'm a genius and I catch on fast to anything that's worth catching on to.
Right.
And I listened to what a lot of people said today, and it was a close friend of mine who we used to be in the streets together, and he's a big doctor now in Prince George's County and D.C. You hear him on the radio all the time. He just went to Africa. That's right. He went to, I believe it was Liberia, where his father was buried. And when he went there, he took $60,000 with him. And the problem was all the corruption that was going on. He almost didn't make it back home. And most people who leave from there, they always talk about what Americans do. Most people who leave from where he went, they call it NRA. Now, I know what that stands for? Never return again. Because the way people try to rip us off when we go to help, right, and connect. So we need to work on that both ways. But my fear is people like Jeff not knowing about Bitcoin and how he can use it as a vehicle where he can't get ripped off and he can still empower the people. So we need to have more Jeffs here, connecting with more people in here, and I think that gives us the vehicle where we can connect both sides of the continent where we helping our people for real. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's my fear. That's not happening, just like it doesn't happen before. This all was, a reality.
Yeah, I just say to not end on such a negative note, because I think the idea of this conference and the idea of gatherings like this is that we are challenged to move forward, right, and to take this and to manipulate it for our usage. And so I would say, we've all talked about education, and you've mentioned Davos and the World Economic Forum. I actually was at Davos this past year. I was the only brown person there. But I think really education in terms of, number one, the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain, right? You can be in blockchain and not mess around with cryptocurrency and not put your life savings on the line, right? You can become a blockchain developer and build tools and build applications and build voting mechanisms and build, crypto kitties and do things like that, right? Yeah. So I think education is huge, and I think STEM education, right, training our people to become developers, right, and then to hire them and to create pipelines, right, to get them into these positions where they're at companies, right, that are at the forefront, right, Consensus works with WEF, right, and so having, I'm scrapping my way up, trying to make sure that, there's influence there, but I think this is a place where I will say the barrier to entry for blockchain is low. It's one of, when the internet was being created, right, the government created it behind closed doors, and of course, we were not involved in that, right, because we were not involved in the government. And so I think with blockchain, right, there's so many open source blockchain curriculum out there, right, there's all these nonprofits that are trying to teach people how to code on all kinds of programming languages, right, we work with Ethereum, which is on Solidity, and so there are resources, right, but it's just about this awareness piece, and then once we can get people to start building, everything is open source, which means that no one has to grant you permission, right? If you have access to a computer, if you can get to the library, if you can get on GitHub, you can start coding, you can start developing. And so I think it's about, making sure at all educational levels, right, we're getting people involved and saying you can become an entrepreneur, you can become a developer, no one has to grant you access. And then you also say, okay, now start informing policy, right? So there's a two-prong approach, but I think that's a really cool thing that we're seeing with this technology that we're not seeing with others, right? We're the whole notion of blockchain, if you go and read the Bitcoin white paper, is that we're trying to remove power from people, right? The whole ethos of blockchain is decentralizing power, and so I think we got to keep that in mind and keep that energy going.
Right.
All right. So what projects have you seen or are you currently working on?
That are
A lot.
Okay, in regards to like social justice
yeah,
or
in regards to
accountability?
social justice, yeah.
Okay, so one project that I like, and this is more about taking cities, localities, and removing their codependence on the federal government for funding is the Berkeley Blockchain Initiative. Yeah, where they're taking, so I don't know if folks know this, but when you have like a pension fund or whatever, until you reach of age to get that pension, it's actually stored in a fund that the state then uses to invest in like Wall Street and terrible things like Dakota Access Pipeline and the prison industry, right? In order to generate more revenue for themselves. So what this initiative is trying to do is take those bonds out of the hands of the state, or at least localize them, put them on a blockchain, and let the local residents like trade and exchange with them. In order to generate locally sourced funds to fund public infrastructure. That's one really cool project that I've seen. Another cool project that I've also seen is, well, I'm building out a blockchain for public health, but I'm not going to talk about that too much. And then I really like, okay, I like Kairos and what they're doing. It was started by a young black man. And what Kairos is a facial recognition software for private keys. So instead of you getting like this long digit that you can lose, right? Not everyone has the ability to like memorize or recognize or whatnot. You can even use something like an Obama phone. They call them basic feature phones. You can just use that, the camera on there, to help that generate your private key. And then I'm an advisor for a couple projects. So of course there's the Bridget that's gonna replace Google. I'm on another advisor for another project that's basically cooperative land buying and built-in land trusts. And then another project that basically allows you to get your bachelor's degree for only $1,000 and it's accredited. Yeah. Yeah.
I've talked a lot. Y'all can go.
Well, currently I'm in downtown Acacia. The project I'm working on is empowering young people in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
I've always worked with straight people. I started the Pizza Halls in Washington, D.C. before the politics of this city destroyed it. And I was working with a young lady who got shot 5 times with an AK-47. And one day her brother called me from prison. And he was like, Mo, you don't work with the gay children. All you do is work with the straight children. I was like, I work with anybody who wants help. So when he came home from prison, they were known for terrorizing Gallery Place. I started working with them 6 years ago. 6 years later, we have a business in downtown Acacia where all the development's happening. We're a hub for 6 other businesses. We have a clothing store, event space, and with the help of Sinclair Skinner, they will be engaged in this next. And the thing about it, I'm not God, so I don't judge other people and their preferences. But what I've done is make it a space where everybody can love each other, no matter what you believe in or what you do. And I think we need to do more of that in our community because we are pitted against each other for so many different reasons. And one of the biggest things that I learned from working in the gay community is the classism. It's vicious.
Yes.
You think the classism in the straight community is bad? How we look down on each other? Go work in the gay community. And so if we can pull each other together and teach ourselves how to love under one umbrella, we can get a lot of progress. And I've been able to get more straight people to support this than gay people because a lot of gay people are mad that I'm working with young gay people and I'm seeing some things they don't want me to see. So.
Okay, that's cool. So I can't talk directly about projects I'm working on just because NDA stuff, but I can talk about what I'm excited to work with, and it's just this idea of self-sovereign identity. Essentially giving people the ability to only share information about themselves that's necessary for interaction. So for example, when you go to a bar and you get carded, they'll take your ID, and when they get that, they get your gender, your address, your birthday, when all they really need to know is whether or not you're 21. And so this idea of self-sovereign identity would essentially allow maybe someone can go in, have a like a QR code or something that is representative of them, and then the bar could scan it and potentially just get a yes or no back. You know, they don't even need your birthday. They just really need to know whether you specifically are over 21. So something like that, that's a simple way of explaining it, but that's something that I'm really excited to work with.
Something that I will be very excited to work with in the future. It's we'll have to see more B Corps go to ICO and B Corps. So a B Corp is a benefit corporation that has to have almost like a for-profit charity, right? And the essence is if we're able to combine B Corps with ICOs in a responsible way, we might be able to have some public good come out of some of the projects that people are doing. And I've not seen it yet. Right, so my Twitter handle is @myICOlawyer, and come at me with ideas. Let's talk about how we could combine the for-profit charitable company with an ICO actual fundraising and do something amazing.
He said something very important. When I started working with these young people, everybody told me to do nonprofit. Never again in hell would I do that or heaven. Because when I did nonprofit, everybody controlled what I did. Everybody can see my books. People try to tell me to be quiet because they were giving me money. When we did the for-profit, we still raised money, and nobody could stop us from doing what we wanted to do. And so when everybody come to me about doing nonprofit work and doing all, I say, do a for-profit first, then do a nonprofit to clean your money up like the other people do. So we got to teach our people the real way. You're not going to build wealth doing a nonprofit, not if you're black. Now, everybody else can use a nonprofit to do development in D.C. and do this in D.C., but they're not going to let us do it. Everybody who started, when I started doing nonprofit work at the same time over 12 years ago, most of them who had the intellectual property that I had are millionaires, or they doing $1 million business in this city right now. But so we got to educate our people. So this right here is the vehicle. You know, things like this are the vehicles, but we got to educate our people on the right way and the wrong way, because a lot of times our people get misguided.
All right, time for questions.
I just have a comment as well. I recommend looking into LC3. That way you can do VC with nonprofit and
You just
also
said something
getting
that's really
grants.
important, so we need you to run that all the way back with the mic.
You should look into the formation of an LC3. Only 10 states and Puerto Rico allow you that type of entity, which allows you to do VC investing, nonprofit, and getting grants.
So there's something I'm looking at out of England called the Venture Capitalist Investment Trust. And what happens with a VCIT, you're able to, so I'm a tax guy. I forgot to tell y'all that. So with a VCIT, what you're able to do, common people, regular people, not accredited investors necessarily, put their money into a fund, and the fund chooses which sort of VC projects to back. And if any of the funds make money, it's the tax-free benefit. What you're saying to the government is, because you didn't want to take time to invest in these businesses, and we did, we should actually reap the benefits because we're going to bear all the burdens. And not 99% of businesses fail, but most businesses don't make it. So it's a very interesting tax device we could use to spur innovation, and looking for legislators and other people that might be interested in working on projects like that also.
My name is Morris, and the last panel was about identity in the blockchain, and this panel is about police corruption and social justice. And I kind of see them merging. Like, they could leverage that identity technology and facial recognition and all the stuff that you put on the blockchain, and the police could use that to target us individually.
They already do.
Well, I just want to hear what you guys' take on that is.
So if there was something to be put on the blockchain when it comes to information that we want to know bad police officers. We want to know their arrest history. We want to know who they arrested. We want to know all the cases where they've been found not to have probable cause to arrest someone. We want to know where all your failed searches. We want to know how much money you've cost us. We want to know how many of your arrests were not charged. That is information that's appropriate for the blockchain, and including all your police videos too while you're on duty. And that should be one file available for every public servant in a way. That's something that could be done, but why would anybody pay money to get it done?
Right.
So again, if you look at B Corps and ICOs, maybe we could get some social justice, and maybe we could get some accountability. Some people that maybe don't want the accountability, but they're not going to create the system to hold them accountable.
People will get that app, though.
No, and in fact, I'm Mike Scott from Baltimore, so and the school system too, but that's okay. No, so we're working with some of the consent decree issues in Baltimore, And so we are looking at not a B Corp because they are gatekeepers for public benefit corp. So we want a public benefit corporations. We have some, solidarity economy lawyers making sure we get that right. But where we're really focused is on creating a human sensor network that is owned and operated and monetized by community, right? We don't want Hopkins and Bloomberg and whoever else wants to monetize our data. We want to be able to protect it and put it on the blockchain. But we're running into issues around the openness of government because, we're basically living through training day in Baltimore now, right? Like real life. So we think that if we can find some solutions to, because it's public, put it on the blockchain for them. They don't have to participate because all their stuff is public. But we're not sure how quite to get to that point in terms of some of the principles of blockchain. So open to some of your thoughts.
Can I, just on the police issue, I did a lot of work on this in San Francisco, and I think two best practices that I've seen, one is out in Minneapolis, and they're actually trying to get instituted malpractice insurance for officers. So if you do commit a transgression against a citizen, you actually have to pay from either that insurance or it comes out of your pension. Because I don't know if folks know this, but it's literally like draining our budgets from city to city for paying for all these different like wrongful death suits and whatnot. And then another one is psychological evaluations that are actually ran independently by a council of community leaders that are gonna screen some of these folks to be able to predict who is gonna be ready to commit a murder against one of our folks, so.
And we actually have AI that's not theoretical, that's implemented in Detroit.
Yes.
That reduce their payouts. And we also have AI over psychological evaluation. We can't get the data from government. So we're gonna have to sue them on right, because we're like, well, how much are you paying out? Who's sitting on the bench? What's the lawsuit, right? They don't wanna come, right? So we have to find some solutions to get the data to put it on the chain.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for the panelists.
So